All right, change. That's what we're talking about. Assured of the future, assured where we're headed. That's really important, to know the outcome of the game before it's played. That's good, isn't it, Willie? You don't use that to bet. You can't do that if you had the newspaper where they have the next day headline, but you know the next day headline. You know where you're headed. I know your testimonies. You guys know where you're headed. We lead change based on the fact that we know where we're headed. And so we saw about ourselves, and yes, when our hands raised on that, we said who needs to make a change. We had a 64.3% ratio of who said they needed to change. But when we said who has somebody in their life that needs to make a change, we had 100%. And so we kidded about that, and then we really know we know we have to be the change. The morning group did put in the Rocky Balboa, if I can change and you can change, we can all change. That was in the text thread with that group. But yeah, we have to start with us. And we have to take the log out of our own eye. We learned that already. We have to learn to be children. We learned that. And so now, but if we're leaders, we can't sit idly by. No, that's up to them. That's between them and God. We have to get involved. Jesus doesn't leave us the same, and He calls us to help people change. Somebody said in a session earlier, change is a dirty word. We keep using it. Quit using it. We use new direction, growth. Okay, use whatever you want to use. Transformation, use it all. But Jesus uses change, or at least He does in the translation that I read. So I think it's okay. But either way, we're going to see why people wouldn't use the word too. We'll address that. Next week, real important, Andrew Beach will be here all week long, live every session, and helping with stories of change. He's somebody who's been in pastoral ministry for 17 years at First Evan, and leaving family ministry and city ministry and youth ministry. And he's going to tell about stories of change. He's helping people make big-time career changes right now, and especially he's created something called the Encore Initiative. He's helping people make retirement changes. So he's got some good stories, and I would encourage you highly to come to that. And then back here the 8th, the 10th, our organization. It doesn't matter. Some of you are the head of your organization. Some of you have key pieces, and some of you are brand new in your organization. Isn't that right? Right. Brand new. But you know what? One guy and I, Drew, we don't use names here, talked about you all the way over, and the things you do that are already making an influence on that place, on strategic. So he does this paperclip system. He's knocking it out, right? And he's in a good mood all the time. When we know Jesus, we can help others change. So it doesn't matter if I'm the intern. The intern we had at Wonderman, who's still there today after 12 years, people just said, I don't know. These are people all different faiths and backgrounds and orientations. They said, she just seems to have light. Huh. Good. This intern program's working just fine. This fellow program's working just fine. So that we think about that. So we're going to see how to do that as an organization. And then our city, we're about to learn some things. We're praying. But we're about to learn even more about what needs to change. And we'll be asking more guest speakers to step up. So this will go, really the dates are a typo there. That's really the 15th through the math, 13th on that. But we'll really go out another week. We'll cover all February because we'll at least have one more set of guest speakers on organizational change, a testimony. Those of you who need your agendas in a graphic because you're visual learners, it looks like this. We already saw we could change ourselves to come and follow Jesus. That's Matthew 4:19 is, come and follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. Right away, come follow me. I'm going to help you change, and you're going to help change other men. Right in the first calling. So certainly we can't say, I'm not there to help others change, for sure. And then the verse for this week, Matthew 14:30, is where Peter's walking on the water. I'm doing big things. Jesus has got me out walking on water, and then I look at the world and I fear. And I lose trust. So we're going to see part of the way we help another person change is to reorder their fears, reorder their trust. To trust, and he had to trust, and so to stop from drowning. He said, oh, you have little faith. So Jesus chided him just a little bit, but he loved him like crazy. He was sure he was loved the whole time. We learned the last couple of weeks that this is how we change. There's a diagram for it, and we can say we have too many diagrams. I'm sorry. There's a good one. It will give you, again, to attach to last week's article, these diagrams from Dallas Willard exist. He wrote a book, one of the most important books I've ever read, Renovation of the Heart. And here's how people change. And the chapters are divided up in these same spheres, but we change when His Spirit speaks to our spirit. How many of you have cried out, Abba, Father? Lord, I need you. Lord, I believe. Help me to believe. Lord, I can't do it on my own. Those are all honest cries to God. Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. Will you help me? All honest cries. And then His Spirit speaks to our spirit, and we're changed. The way God said it to the prophet Ezekiel is this way: I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I'll remove your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. I'll put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and obey my laws. It's His Spirit speaking to our spirit that causes change. And it's true in the New Testament, it's true in the Old Testament, and then that informs our mind, and then that informs our bodily actions, and that informs our social interactions. Oh, I'm at this place, I'm not feeling like I'm good enough. I'm feeling a little like everybody else has something more to offer than me. That doesn't sound right. You don't. That's not true, ever. Your greatest strength is the Lord Jesus, and you know it. Again, we want to keep inviting people who may not know Jesus and want to look at leadership, but I happen to know all your testimony, so I'm going to keep talking to you that way. But we want this to be open and more. And then our soul wraps around all of that. Our social interactions, our soul. Who thinks of their soul admit they just think of it as something fluffy and something intangible? The soul is the wrapper around it all, in a way, an operating system. That's why David says, bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that's within me. And so it's everything. You have had your heart right about something maybe. It's maybe hard to distinguish. And your mind was certainly right. And you weren't sick, but something was just off. And your soul is the encompassing of your whole being. It is what lasts. It is the same thing when you wake up in heaven. That same thing that God's Spirit speaking to our spirit will be clear. But in this day and age, it's I think David says the best, is our whole being. It's everything within us. So that social interaction, your mind, your heart, your will, all there. Bless the Lord with all my heart, with all my mind, and all my soul. So there too, I want to love the Lord with all my heart, mind, and soul. It's distinguished. And I would just say it's the encompassing of everything. And another way he says it is that it's more like the operating system. There's the iPhone, and there's the hardware, and there's the iOS that runs it is another way to think about it. I know it's not perfect. I commend you to the chapter on it for sure, because Dallas Willard is, 50, 60 years ahead of me in wisdom in writing, and it's really helpful. But almost you can say it the opposite way. The way we've learned this graph the best last week is almost the opposite. The last mistake you made, get in your mind. I don't want to know it. But it was driven by a bodily impulse. Cake last night at 11:30. We like cake good for us at 11:30, Henry? Well, flat belly like you, it doesn't really matter. But for Brian and I, we need to quit. Cake at 11:30 is not so good. It tasted good. So the body said, I got to have it. It informs your will, your heart, your spirit. I'm just going to have it. Or a thought. Our thoughts go all kind of places, good places and bad, correct? And so then that thought drives a decision or an action. And I made a mistake. A feeling I'm inadequate. And counseling has learned that we're not discounting feelings, okay? Counseling has taught us we got to name them and claim them. And it seems like some of that is right. And yet I can't let them drive me, because my feelings will trick me in a minute. So if I let that happen, or social interaction, we'll use that example. You felt like you're not good enough. I'm not sure what I'm going to do here. I'm feeling nervous. No, I am good enough. And so I make a decision. And so all of and by the way, somebody said, mine doesn't always go out between feeling and body, that action. Yeah, absolutely. That thing spins around. Your action, when you act, the mistake spins around any of those places. But while it may not be perfectly easy to understand this, it's, again, in the article, I commend you to Renovation of the Heart. It is easy to say, when I let feelings or thought or bodies or social interactions overrule my heart and mind, and I don't seek the Lord in that and have His Spirit speak to my spirit, I make mistakes. Big ones. And that's certainly how I've made them. Okay, today, now, in 46 minutes, we're on this lesson. And those are important because we do have to take the log out of our own eye. We do have to be changed to help people change. They will see the change in you. Who has, when we say bring your business, we're about to ask you about change, but is there something you really hope we make sure we cover this time? Yeah, so breaking it apart is really important, right? I'm not responsible to make that change in person, but I'm helping lead them. And if anybody says people can't change, has never been led well. There's not a leader who's not taking you from where you were to where you're trying to go. And if somebody's helped you change, helped you transform, helped you grow, all these are the same word, really, help you grow, then you know that person's deeply committed to change. And Jesus is certainly deeply committed to change. He commands it, and we transform, we look more and more into His image with ever-increasing glory as we see Him who's the Spirit, see what He is, what He's doing. We gaze at Him. We change. And so that makes us new. It makes us unable when we know that to leave anybody else as they are, the ones we love. And so can't just dismiss them. That's apathy. I'll never change. Well, God changed you. God changed me. He can do it. And we need to be instruments of that change. So who has someone in their life that needs to make a change? It's a hand raise, not on video. And then, and again, we're not mentioning names for sure, and many of you won't want to say what it is, and that's going to be fine. But who has something, it can give it categorically the type of thing they need to change? Yeah, good. So we're going to, again, keep yours in mind. Does anybody else want to share one with the group? But keeping that person specifically in your mind is going to help the rest of this, to help you see and help you help others. Anybody else have a category or scenario? I'll give one fun one. Just yesterday with a guy, it's like I got somebody on the committee that just every time I get with them, they just talk too much. They just won't quit talking. They make a good point, but by the end they won't quit talking. I was like, "You talking about me?" And he said, "No." So he wasn't talking about me. Praise the Lord.
I thought he was talking about me.
And no, that's how I was talking about you too. No, but he's not. So they great influential person, great input, but then at the end won't stop it. So I just want to help them. I want to help them not speak so much, and say what matters. So it can be all these range. That was a workplace scenario thing. What else? Good. Really helpful. Those are 3 broad ones, and let's leave those there, and then let's see how are they, and then use your example if you want to as you stay this back. How are they being held back from who they're meant to be? Sheridan, yours is pretty easy. I'm not coherent enough of the time. I really can't. What's the life I'm missing? Somebody called me the other night on the way home from Birmingham. They were like, I got a meeting with my boss, and I need to help them with these things. And it was a list of complaints, right? And a list of things that person really doesn't do well. But yet I've got to get them focused on what they could be, even as the employee. What are we missing here? What could we do together? How could everybody else flourish? I got to see the good. We got to work on what's good. Especially men don't need another conscience. My wife helped me with that one time. Really serious change the way I interact with something. I'm still learning that though. They don't need somebody else saying, here's what's wrong. They need somebody saying, here's what could be. So get in your eyes what these people could be that you're thinking about. And then here's how people change. They need a vision. That just ties right to that. So we started right there. They need a vision for how they would be better off. How the workplace would be better off. How the home place would be better off. How it would be better. They need intention. They got to make a firm decision to make a change. I'm going to do this by then, blank. And they need the means to do it. Many times that means somebody coming alongside of them. Many times that for a 14-year-old, 15-year-old Henry means they need 3 alarms, not 2. That's the means to get up. They got to. What do they need, and where's that breakdown? So diagnose that for them too. They wanted to. Okay, that's the addiction cycle recovery is that way. I want to, I need to, I can see it. I have an intention to, but then somehow it's falling apart at the means. Some part is falling apart, and we're going to see the obstacles to that in a second. And we said that already. So what are the obstacles to their change? We got a list of 7 coming up. But what are the obstacles you see? Let's warm up a little bit. I think it helps you to think it through. Confidence.
Lack of confidence.
Yeah, and where does confidence come from? Ultimately from Jesus, you can trust. Yes, and confidence comes from predictability. I know if I do this, this happens. I know if I do this, this happens. The confidence comes from a repeat cycle of knowing. So I get up and if I learn to trust Him, to say the spiritual thing you're saying, I learn to trust Him in this situation, I learn to trust Him in this situation, I learn to trust Him. What else? Do I have this skill? Do I have this confidence? Do I need to grow in the confidence itself? That's good. It's true. Spiritual battle, can't explain any other way. And I think your soul really comes in there, to answer that question. I've got an enemy against my soul. And that's why David prays it up. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Trying to trick me. And there are lots of ways to trick. And the number one is, I feel awkward. I'm the only one doing this. I don't feel as awkward when I go back to the old way. I feel alone. People focus on what they need to give up. And another one, people can only handle so much change. I think this one's a positive and negative. People can only handle so much change. Even Jesus saying, come and follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. That's a 180 turn. It's a drop the nets and follow. But at the same time, he was growing them up. He was using the way they're made. I'm quite sure. I was not there. This is not perfectly biblical, but you see the pattern of it specifically being who they were, talking to them about the way they're made and changing them. So you do, for the person you're trying to help, if they're changing 16 things at once, you need to help them with the thing that matters most and not the little, because even in a new job, you need to be relying like 70% on your confidence. So like Frank saying, if I'm going to be confident, I got to be working enough in my sweet spot and stuff I know how to do that I have the confidence to do, and 30% growth. Now somebody like a coder can change that pretty fast. I can learn how to do new code, and now I got a new war chest of competence, to use your word, Brian. You're learning your competence in your job. I got a new war chest, and now I'm another 30% of growth. So you can spin it, but you need to know that you're in your confidence, and as leaders, you need to make sure the people you're helping are in their area of competence. If you change them completely, they're going to be in trouble. Who worries about resources? If I do this, no more nickels. This seems safe. That seems risky. Everybody. People are worried about different levels of readiness. I'm just not quite ready. People tend to revert to old behaviors when the pressure to change is removed. That's what you're saying. Couple. And some are good day revert to, we've had 5 straight days. I deserve a good one. My son was talking to me about how even the way sports and high school worked, as he's now in college, kind of like this 5 days of hard work, then just blow it off on the weekend. So then I just got to go back to that other way. I earned performance. We're going to get to that in a minute. It's not a performance cycle. It's bad. So there's a difference in joy and, taking time and turning it off, I'd say. So, or some people have a really stressful day. There's a lot going on. So because of the stress, I'm going to revert to I'm going to go ahead and have that pie now. Helps me sleep. I did that this week, so I'm just being clear. What's common? I just gave you a hint. What's common in all these? Yeah, fear and worry are in the middle of all this, just about. I feel awkward. I feel alone. I'm focused on what I have to give up, what will happen. I'm focused on resources. I flip back to the old lifestyle. It's fear. And could the solution be a reordering of the fear? Could it be that I need to reorder my fears or help them see in that vision, intention, and means that it's a reordering of the fears? What are things we fear? For tonight, what do you fear? What's the next fear after that? Just civil unrest? Could impact me. How could it impact you? It could hurt you physically. You could lose your property. Could break a window. Somebody you love could get hurt. So we got to get our fears and all those things, we line them up. So the same reason people stop doing that stuff that's bad for them so they can keep their job, because they fear losing their job. We've used this COVID example. Who wanted to be the first one to take a shot? Anybody?
Believe it or not, my aunt.
Yeah. You didn't. You needed this stuff. You didn't want to be first. You didn't want to be alone. You were worried about what it would give up. But ultimately, 81% of America took a shot. 70% took 3. What did they reorder? For somebody who took one, again, I'm not, and by the way, as in a political statement really, but it was the highest extremism of both politics, major parties that didn't take them. Extremism, both sides. It was the people more in the middle who did, is one, if you cut it that way. But we're not making a political statement because you ultimately didn't choose, most of us, because of politics. If you took a shot, why did you take one? It looks like getting sick is worse than the shot after you had enough examples. That's what it looks like. What else? So you reordered your fear. I'm dying here by myself. Our family, some of it's really a blessing, but some of it's too much. We're dying to just being too much. And so we got to getting back to normal. The fear of not being back to normal outward. And so and to both groups, somebody said, we had an older person in our life that we just wanted to make sure we kept safe because the data was showing there's older people dying. So we're going to protect them. All good reasons, all reorderings of fear. And that's what we have to do. But listen to this. But the fear of the Lord that comes out of trust in Him and produces obedience is fear that we experience His joy. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in His ways. That's Psalm 128:1. This kind of fear is pure and clean, Psalm 19:9. To know the fear of the Lord is awe and respect and wonder, and to know that He loves you, there is no fear in love. We've got fear if we're worried about punishment and retribution, if we're worried about not making the team. Our sports world messes with us on this. Got a fear of that, fear of the job, fear of losing my job is one of the worst ways to keep my job. I'm just trying to hold on to it. I'm trying to hold on to it. Instead of saying, I don't need this job. I'm loved like crazy. I'm going to be good no matter what. Now I can move into it with faithfulness. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. Because I'm fearing, what can man do to me? Jesus says this, don't be afraid of those who can kill the body and after that can do no more. But I'll show you who you should fear. Fear the one that after the body doesn't exist, basically, has judgment. Fear God, but know that He cast out fear. He cast out all the other fear. He helps us reorder our fear, and we got to help this person do this, believer or non-believer. Okay? Back into this in time to help your person change. That's where what's their treasure? They fear losing the treasure. They fear losing the treasure. It might be, we had a lot of pride and anger kind of things this morning. They fear not being in charge of their world. They fear these things, but this is radical. This is almost everything on the list, the resources to do. And he's trying to get to one thing. Sell your possessions, give to the poor, treasure in heaven that will never fail. That's what he says to the rich young ruler. Jesus says, you lack one thing. What does he tell him to do? He tells him 3 things. It's confusing math. You lack one thing, says, sell your possessions, give them to the poor, come and follow me. It's a 3-step process. He wants his heart. There are people whose heart are not bound up by their resources, are not bound up by what they have. And that's true for people who have less and people who have more. And there are people with less and more where that's their treasure. That's why they need to quit relying on that, to release of the fear that leads you to trust, not a gathering of more. Don't be afraid. What's the promise there? You're pleased to give you what? The kingdom of God. The kingdom of God. That's what He's given you. Some of this literally, C.S. Lewis says, like playing with mud pies when you're waiting a holiday at the sea. In Memphis, we'd say it's like eating a crystal in the gutter on the way to Ruth's Chris or the way to Folks Folly. That's what you'd say. On the way to have something wonderful, you'd stop and mess with it. God's given the whole kingdom. It's going to be there. It's resources forevermore. We cannot think or imagine how great they are, and yet we stop and we worry about it. So know that and you have to be that. That's part of that part. You have to be. Why is he always acting like everything's overflowing? He's got limited resources too. Why does he act that way? Okay, so here's an important question as we turn. Does the person you know, the person you want to help change, the person who needs to change, know Jesus or not? And that's different for everybody. Okay? And it should be. And so you've got some say yes, some say no. That matters. And then the question is, how does God see that person, whether they know him or not?
As his child.
As his child. How else? Sees him as somebody he's created to be holy and blameless. That person is made in the image of God. And here's what's true for everybody. That person is loved more by God than they love themselves. Part of it seems like a selfishness, a focus. And, God loves them more. And then you Presbyterians might get wrapped up in this, like, is he elect or not? Who spends time thinking about that before they help somebody? Stop thinking about that. That's not what he's telling us. Billy Graham says, don't for a second ever make the gates of heaven more narrow than God does. And we're not sure how wide they are. But we know this, he's done it all. He says, here's what some verses you do know that help. He's incredibly patient, desiring that none should perish. And there's not been one that's truly sought after him that hasn't found him. Those verses are encouraged. So our job, we cannot over-love somebody. We cannot over-treat them as if they're God's and going to be with us in heaven. It's true. He'll have to call it. He'll have to do the change. Paul planted the seed. Apollos watered. God causes the growth. God ultimately is the one who causes the change spiritually and any other change. And every one of these changes these people need to make in your lives, and don't call them these people again. Erase that. But every change that people you love need to make ultimately is spiritual. Whether they are spiritual, know they're spiritual or not, it's a spiritual change. It's a spiritual battle. And we need to know that God sees them as holy and blameless. He's paid for your sin in the past. He's paid for your sin today. He's paid for your sin tomorrow. He sees them that way, and you're an instrument of his patience. So now we're going to get super practical with those principles. The 1 Minute Manager, an old book. Rob, you can probably tell us how old it is. But it's at least 25 years old, I think. And they redid it a little bit. But 3 1-minute things are in there. So 1 minute goals. So this is where you help this person. With that, knowing that God loves them, knowing that you're pouring out of love, and that he sees you as an instrument of peace, take a minute, look at your goals, look at your performance, and see if your behavior matches your goals. You want to help them with that. That person at work, where do you want to be? Well, I want to do this, this, and this. Well, you have to come in more than 2 hours a day to do that. You can help them in 1 minute. What are your goals? What are you doing? Is what you're doing adding up to your goals? I want to be fruitful. I want to be flourishing here. What's the goal to do that? They need a vision for what could be, but in that vision aligns that goal. That's part of making that intention, is that they have a good goal. So every one of them, you need to know what their goals are. To help them, you need to know. That's what Jesus asked. What do you want? First red letters in John's Gospel. What do you want? So you need to know their goal, and it might be off. It might not be something that's good for them. I just want to stay out every night and have a good time. The only thing I wanted to do in college was stay there. But at some point, that was my fear, to not have to be brought home, but at some point, that wasn't going to last. I was going to be pretty awkward still in college, wasn't I, Frank? 22 years later. So, important thing, 1 minute goal, what is it? And then you can help them change the goal if the goal is not good for them. 1 Minute Praisings. This is where we're talking about the gospel here. People who feel good about themselves produce good results. It always starts with the person. Help people reach their full potential. Catch them doing something right. So that person you want to change, catch them doing something right. What's the right ratio of of positive feedback to negative to lead somebody in change?
7 to 1.
7 to 1. That's the stat I like. That's your children. That's your spouse. That's your co-workers. This guy really needs to make a change. Well, this guy's in dire strait, the one you're talking about. It's an emergency situation. But there's wonderful stuff about that person. I got to encourage him. Somebody left here and it was Wednesday morning. They had to go tell somebody something really straight. I go, I got to think of 6 positive things really fast. But that's not the point. It's not shove 6 straight things in. It's a constant. It's a life with them. And so I might not be the one. Am I the one to help them with this change? I might not be. And if I'm not speaking positivity into their life about what they are doing right, they're made in the image of God, and there are positive things about them, I got to give 1 minute praisings all the time. Third one, 1 minute reprimands. This is really good. That's why it's so long. Take a picture. I can send it to you later, whatever. Confirm the facts and review the mistake together. Be specific. You see that in the video, so the confirming facts before the video comes out helps. But confirm It helps with a teenager. It helps with people at work. This was not good. We didn't do the QC on this. We cost the client a lot of money. Express how you feel about the mistake. We can't keep working like this for our clients. They'll fire us. Then pause for a moment and allow the person to be concerned about what they've done. Let them own it. Yep, that was me. I'm the one who didn't check it before it went out. Yep, I'm the one who didn't do that at home. That's on me. Let them own it. And if they own it, you're done with this almost. But then you let them know they're better than their mistake. Yeah, I've seen you do it right 100 times. I know you don't want it to happen that way. Maybe they've never done it right, but I know you don't want that. And remind them that you have confidence based on these other positive things you've told them. Again, not patronizing, that doesn't help. Then understand that the redirect is over. Don't withhold your love. Don't withhold your care, no matter how mad you are at them. That's just for every relationship you have. You can't kind of say, I'm just mad. No, get it over with. This wasn't good. We admit it. Now my job is success. There have been people that I was almost positive they weren't going to make it in a role. And as it got more, and through a coaching and counseling process all the way to the end, I could even say, I'm not sure you're supposed to be here. And certainly if you don't change these behaviors, you're not supposed to be here. But if you still want to be here, it's my job to help you. And I'm really going to help you. How can I help you next? And then maybe I had 2 ideas to how to help them too. But if you don't show up, if the 6 a.m. shift and you keep showing up at 7:30, you can't work here. So it's clear, but then even how you let them go. We had somebody this morning had to let somebody go. You might be confirming their image of godness, to say it that way, on the way out the door better than you did on the way in. You have all these attributes. You have all these great things about you. You'll be able to do this well. Maybe this kind of environment will be better for you than this one. So you're with them all the way out, even if you're no longer responsible. Does that make sense? What else practical can you help them with? What else might be practical that we might have missed here? This is just really like, what else do they need? As you think about your person and the way you want to help them, did this cover everything? And he was able to help you with 1-minute check-ins, whether that was an athletic thing or an academic thing or a being nice to your siblings thing. And did he was able not to lecture?
Yeah.
Really good. Really good. Some of us want to say more. Big problem of mine. 1-minute check-in, how's it going? If they can own it, let them go. Another, I got to go back to the goal. What's your goal? If they're not owning it, is this helping your goal? Really good. What else? Good. The supporting cast. The other means, again, people are ends, not means, but they're mean. We're also in this together with people, helping them, and then just staying in it with them too. Asking the question. And look, we said it's all spiritual, but we're mostly given presenting needs. The paralytic needed to be healed. The woman at the well needed to be validated out of her shame that she was made in the image of God, that she was a person worth talking to. That's what he did first. That's what Jesus did first for us. Say, you're a real person. How you doing? Wait a minute. Jews don't have anything to do with Samaritans. I know. I'll treat you different. I'm validating. So it could be a whole series of presenting needs, but you want to do it this way that they understand that you have this hope that's beyond. You don't need them to change. And that's another thing that we've been talking about. I got to release, especially with family members and even more in-laws, but even it seems true at work. But at the same time, at work even more. I don't have the right to have expectations on anybody. He said about even your parents. Why don't they keep our kids more? No. You don't have the right to have expectations, so I don't get to have expectations on them. I got to release what I need from them. Because when I'm changing them because I need something from them, that's manipulation. When I'm changing them when I'm helping them change, I need to say this right every time, it's God who changes them. When I'm helping them change, when I'm facilitating, when I'm being an instrument of peace in that change for their own good, and I don't need a thing. I don't need them to say thank you. They might even forget it was me that helped them. Okay, good. Don't forget the vessel. Know that they got change. How true is this for everybody in your life? What they're focused on, their fear about, and what they're caught up in is something very temporary. It's very temporary. And so first, I got to reorder what lasts. God, His soul, the words of men, faith, hope, and love. These are the things that last. And all this trouble, you're going through trouble now, this is hard, this change is hard, I don't want to do it. But the glory that's to be revealed is far greater. So this is the way we need to walk around. So they say, what gives? You're going through the same hard thing. Interest rates are bad for all of us. Why do you keep having a spirit about you? Why do you keep having hope? So that somebody will ask. So if our eyes are fixed on what is unseen, they'll see it. They'll see it like somebody sees light. And that's the way they were describing you earlier, Brian. He's got light already in that place. They see it. He's busy doing the stuff, but he has a light, he has a hope. Though we see him that way. Here's how Paul David Tripp said it in a devotional that after the funeral, Bill Garner's funeral that I went to Saturday. It just spoke so heavy to me. Like, when we ask the present to give us what only eternity can give, we end up driven, frustrated, discouraged, and ultimately hopeless. When we're trying to get it now, when we're striving to get it now, we end up driven, frustrated, discouraged, and hopeless. What? When we're trying to get ours today, that's what we end up. And a great book on missions that I read, Mission Smart, said the devil drives. Sometimes we kind of brag about our drivenness. The devil drives, but the Spirit leads. God leads. God's saying, I'll bring you through it. I got you. I'll cover you. Now you walk in it and be faithful. There's a difference in being faithful with your gift, using the best to my ability, running the race as fast as your body will let you run it, and giving to work what you can give it, and saying, I gotta have it, I gotta have it, I gotta have it today. If I'm not patient, that's an indication of it. I'm not content. I mentioned Bill Garner already. Anybody else go to that funeral or heard about it? This is a man that discipled probably over 1,000 people in the audience. 2,000 people were there and had been involved in downline doing that, had been executive pastor of 3 different churches, Grace of Anne, Fellowship, and then Harvest. And people were full of stories of how he helped them change, what he did, how he exhibited, how he poured into them, how he loved them, how he sat with them, how he came over and ate their food and just loved on them and just was a presence. And then you get through it all, and they made good fun of him too. Ronnie Stevens gave an unbelievable gospel presentation in that, and said, "I'm not worthy, but to talk about him, but I could talk about his character for more than a day." And I could talk about his humor for 2 days. And I could talk about the faces he gave me. And we get through all that, and the wife gave her testimony of him, and it was really sad and really grieving, and yet so much hope in every sentence. She's not unimpacted. She's really sad. It's the second husband she's lost. And yet at the same time, she's grieving with hope. And then they show a recent sermon he had given up there. That's important. He came to his own funeral. Amazing. And then there was a word from Kenan. And everybody's wondering how Kenan's doing. And an elder had been down there to see him. And what Kenan said, and this was covered throughout the service, is he made faces at people. I can be guilty of that. Make faces, some good faces, some bad faces, some instructive faces, some funny faces. But he said he had guided me with his faces, because he was a mentor to Kenan, the lead pastor. He's the executive pastor. And down, his faces had guided me in so many ways, and some funny, some instructive, some cautionary. And yet, as we knew we were going to crash, they knew they were going to crash. So it wasn't an accident at the last minute and fog or whatever. They knew they were going to crash for however many seconds. And he said, he looked at me and he gave me one more face. And his face was of complete contentment. Complete contentment. His final face. Who's been on a plane, dropped 400 feet and screamed? He knows he's going to crash. He's got a lot of responsibilities. He's got a lot of kids. He's got a wife. But somehow he knows God's got it. When it all comes down, I got 5 seconds to think about it, or however, so I don't know how many seconds it was. But however long, he looked at Kenan and he said, I'm content. I'm good. And he goes, Kenan, I have one more of his faces to guide me the rest of my life. Impactful. Contentment. That's the opposite of this quote. Contentment. I'm good. I don't need this job. God can take care of my family. I'm content. Now, because I'm content, I can move into things faithful. I'm not saying contentment and complacency are different. Rob Carter covered that well, really well. I'm not saying I'm content. Don't have a burden about what's wrong in the world. I'm not trying to move in and help change it. But I'm content, personally, to then move in. So how do we avoid, and all the rest is like a performance trap. We have to avoid it. Sports, our culture, our schools, they teach a performance trap. Not necessarily on purpose. I'm not bashing anything. But we fall into it. You see the difference in somebody playing sports for joy and then watching The Last Dance, where over and over Michael Jordan said, we played out of ability to not want to lose, the fear of losing. Who knows somebody plays out of fear of losing or is at their job trying to keep it? And who knows somebody just playing for the joy? Like Josh seems to turn around and go, I didn't even know I could do that. That's unbelievable. That's joy. Steph Curry talks about playing for joy. My morning group said that's too raw. That happened this week. We can't talk about anything there. So, but he plays with joy. Does he talk smack? I have a friend in football, Philip Rivers. He says, are you kidding me? As they asked him, basically toward the end of his career, are you going to get to keep doing this? Or are you worried about the future? Are you kidding me? I get paid to play a kid's game. The same way he talks smack to the lineman going down the field. So are you kidding me? This is joy. So we've got to stay out of the performance trap. And this is it. But in Sunday school, I can't teach a lesson in one way without saying this in performance. If you're hearing in the sermon at your own church that this is about performance, you've got to do this or you're not in the kingdom, it's off. God paid for that. God paid for all of it. And most of it, you hear it and they didn't say it. So I'm not bashing any church either. I'm just saying, if you're here and I've got to do this, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not eligible, Skip Ryan came to the second time and said, we cannot clean people up before we invite them to church. So there's no performance. All the world's religions operate on performance except Christianity. They're all saying, get this done and you can be worthy of God. That's not how it works. It's impossible. It's impossible in sports. It's impossible at school. It's impossible with work. If you're trying to get it done to be worthy, you're stressed out. No one is righteous, not one. No one can get it done. Steph Curry can't have a perfect shooting night. Nobody can get it done. So what's encouraging about this verse, though? Seems negative, but what's encouraging about it?
All equal playing field.
Look, I'm not alone. That was the second fear thing. I'm not alone. That's the second obstacle. I'm not alone. We're all the same. Amen, Willie. We're all in it together. That's good. And it's also that if actually I can do it, think about it. If I can earn it, then who's God? And same at your job. You better than the sport or the job? No. Yeah. If I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Even the greatest athlete who could do some things better than others, where's it end up, Brian? Fine. So even the worldly analogy is there for the non-believer. It's there. But in faith, God's saying, no one can do it, not one. It's a gift. Don't boast. It's not you. It's me. I've done it. I've paid for it. I've sent my son to die on the cross. He paid for it all. It's finished. It's done. It pays for yesterday's sin, tomorrow's, and the next day. It's grace, and it's the very definition of love. He doesn't say to Zacchaeus, give back half of all you've stolen. Is that how it went down? No. He said, Zacchaeus, who was humble and climbed up in that tree. I just get a view of him. Zacchaeus, come down. I'm going to your house. You're humble and meek and lowly. I'm going to your house tonight. Then he decides to sell half stuff. Then by grace, he said, that's how it works. But God gave it to us. God recognized. He did this for the woman at the well. He does this for Zacchaeus. He does this for Peter and his sin. He does this for Paul. Are you kidding me? He's the one writing this. He was persecuting the church. Paul. It's Jesus whom you're persecuting. And then 2 seconds later, he commissions him. All in the same paragraph. It seems he gives the testimony 3 times in Acts. It seems like he's just saying I was told I was wrong. We'll talk about a 1-minute reprimand, and then I'm commissioned to be the emissary to the free world, the Gentile world. That's us. Praise God. That's how we got to know it. Right there. And so Paul went on to write our purpose right after those verses, that it's not us. We receive it. It's a gift. All of life is a gift. Your job's a gift. Anything, your relationships are a gift. All a gift. And then Ephesians 2:10, that we've been given works to walk in. This day seems tough. This day seems exciting. God prepared this day in advance for us to walk in. Let's walk in it. And then Romans 12:1. In view of God's mercy in God, this is my spiritual act of worship. This is giving it back. It's in a... Zacchaeus wasn't told to clean up first. The woman at the well wasn't told to clean up first. She was validated. The people you're trying to love on, don't try to clean them up, and don't make it a performance trap to clean up. Love them like crazy. Validate them where they're good. Validate them with things that are right about them. Validate the image of godness of them. Don't get them back in the trap. You got to clean up before you meet God. Who wants to meet that God? I can't live up to it. Show them how loved they are, cared for them so much, and show them that you're a person of faith, gratitude, and love, so that they want to know this God, and that everything we do comes from an overflowing of what He's already done for us.